Welcome back to another episode of the Supercar Killer M3 presented by Turn 14 Distribution. We have fixed all those weird and wacky boost issues we were having, so today we're at OnPoint Dyno to make some jam. If you've been following the saga that is the 2JZ M3, then you know that last time we were here at OnPoint, we had a few problems on the dyno, including blowing off a coupler on the intercooler, which we tracked down once we got back to our shop. And we also had a small plumbing issue to the wastegate. One of us, probably Pete, plumbed something wrong to the gate, but we fixed that up, and car seems to be running great. As a matter of fact, Pete, you were saying it drives beautifully on the street.
Yeah,
right
it's
now.
nice. It's real nice. Much better than that S54 that was in there.
Yeah, you were saying it's a lot smoother.
Oh yeah.
It feels like the right power plant in this car, doesn't it? And man, I'm excited to see this thing make some jam. Assuming everything goes smoothly today, we should see some real power numbers. We're going to start off with a 94 octane pump gas tune, and then we're going to throw some of that VP Octanium in there, which will bring our octane level up 8 points. So we'll be at a 102 octane at that point, and that'll let Sasha get a little more aggressive, maybe pick up another, I don't know, 50, 100 horsepower. We'll see. So let's get this thing warmed up and ready to party. Well, Sasha, first of all, we need to apologize off the top here for bringing you a car that wasn't perfect again. It's a theme with us. The boost controller wasn't plugged in properly. Is that true, Peter?
It is, yes.
How did that happen exactly?
That was probably when I was doing the valve seals. I forgot to plug it back in.
Okay.
So we had a couple of aborted pulls there, right?
We did.
Yeah, that's okay.
But it's not smoking, so your valve seal job did work the second time. So
That's correct. We haven't blown any intercooler pipes
No,
either.
this is my favorite car you guys have built.
This thing is
sure.
badass as hell.
Yeah, I really like this
I haven't even driven it yet, but it's beautiful. I'm stoked on it, and the numbers it's making already are pretty solid. We've
yeah, that's kind of what we figured. We thought we kind of hit the limit right around 500.
and the limit you found it was knock rather than like running into some sort of mechanical restriction, I suppose.
Yeah, as expected, usually with this 94 pump gas, you know, you're usually going to hit that before you run out of turbo or you run out of, you know, something else, mechanical strength of a 2J.
Mm-hmm.
That's just all she can do. So you can see in this power graph, there's a little bit of a dip there.
Yep.
Where the knock control is doing its job and pulling some timing.
Yep.
So yeah, you know, 20 pounds, 21 pounds is usually kind of where we find the best balance between power for this octane fuel. I mean, we could go and run 24, 25 pounds of boost and pull a ton of timing out.
Yep.
We wouldn't make any more power. We'd just be burning a lot more fuel, making a lot more heat, and just having a less efficient engine. So kind of there's going to be a boost pressure that's going to match for the octane of fuel where you're not adding boost and not gaining anymore.
Right.
And usually with 2Js with these kind of roughly sized turbos, it's around the 19 to 21 pounds.
So is that where we're at on that
Yeah,
500
so we're
pull?
at 20 pounds of boost
20 pounds
there.
of boost, okay. And I mean, it's a nice fat power curve too. The torque, you know,
yeah, it's
carries
nicely
really
sized.
well.
It's a nicely sized turbo, so you've got that meaty torque down low, but it does start to choke up top, which you can see. And that'll get better with the race gas. We'll be able to push through a bit of that.
So that's our next step then, is to put some race gas in it and see how much we can push it from there.
Yeah, exactly.
And
I think we should be able to get, if I was to guess, 75 horsepower.
Okay. And we should also mention that you don't want to just leave it at the knock threshold like this. Obviously for our purposes on the street and, you know, doing some laps at TMP, we're going to want to pull back from that threshold to a safe limit.
So basically there's three things to understand here with dyno tuning. There's number one, what you can make with the knock control off and the engine's knocking and you don't even care.
Mm-hmm.
That would probably be 550.
Okay.
Then there's what's the limit in one dyno pull with pump gas,
Right.
which is what we did, 500 horsepower, and then it did knock.
Yeah.
and that's a 6-second long dyno pull.
Okay.
So you can imagine if you're on the racetrack, it's going to start knocking in 6 seconds. That's not very sustainable.
Every straightaway you're into knock, yeah.
So, you know, we're going to have to take a pound of boost out. We're going to have to take a couple degrees of timing out. And even then, they'll most likely, with pump gas, the knock control will start activating. And you know, you're kind of pushing your limits on pump fuel with this setup. So yeah, basically, when we tune a car, we'll generally tune it to the limit of knock and then pull it back a safe bit for the customer. And you'll also see dyno shops where they'll just not have knock control, they'll not be listening, and then you can make way more power if you just ignore it. Because you can kind of.
And these are strong enough engines, you could probably ignore it for a while.
Yep.
At least long enough to get the customer out the door, but we don't want to be those guys.
When we were doing our race program with the Hyundai Genesis Coupes, I wanted to see just how much knock the engine could endure. So I just jacked the timing up. I think we were running those cars, if I remember, around 20 degrees of timing.
Okay.
I jacked the timing to like 29 degrees.
Oh, wow.
And it was rattling away for, I think, I must have done 10 or 20 dyno pulls.
Okay.
And there was no deterioration of the engine. So it really depends on the power level in the engine. You can have a lot of knock and not have the engine let go if it's a beefy engine, and that's. But that's a short-term thing. I mean, eventually the engine will fail in one way or another.
We're not encouraging anyone to do that here. That's for sure.
Don't do it.
Yeah, don't be those guys.
So what number can we expect?
Well, why don't we just let them pull the numbers out, like pull the timing out, and see what number we get?
Yeah, so I'll pull the boost down a pound and pull 2 degrees of timing out of it, and then that'll probably be 465, 470, I would guess.
And that's a nice, safe-ish number.
Maybe a bit less.
Yeah. Well, just like you expected, we dropped about 30 wheel peak, but it's still got great area under the curve. I mean, would you even feel that on the street? I don't think I would. Maybe you've got a more refined posterior.
Was that 8%?
Yeah. You maybe feel it, but man, that's still going to feel really lively on the street, I think. I mean, this car is going to have traction issues to begin with.
So what are we making now?
It's right around 470 peak and maybe lost
450 pound-feet torque.
450, yeah. So we lost a bit of torque as well, but I mean, it's not dramatic, all things considered. And you pulled 1 pound of boost and 2 degrees of timing?
2 degrees of timing, yeah.
And you think, what's that? The boost is dropping how much versus the timing?
I would say we're probably between around 15 to 20 horsepower per pound of boost.
Okay.
And
the rest would be timing.
15-ish timing. Yeah.
Okay. So let's call that our, realistic street numbers, and maybe we can move on to throwing this stuff in here, which you guys have seen us run once before. This is the Octanium octane boosting product, and it raises the octane level by 8 full numbers, which means we'll go from 94 to 102 or 80 points. Don't be fooled by the difference between points and numbers, everybody. If you go to like Canadian Tire or Napa and buy, octane booster there, it's only giving you like 8 points, which is less than 1 full number of octane. So that stuff's not going to do it for something like this, but this is adding some real knock resistance, so you should theoretically be able to get a little more aggressive with the tune, right? Well, with the race gas additive in there, it is looking pretty healthy, isn't it? We picked up, almost 75 wheel horsepower. We're up to like 573.5 peak horsepower, and what's our peak torque? It's up to like
530.
530, wow. So it actually picked up a really healthy amount of torque, didn't it?
Yeah, because we were able to add more boost, right? So we were able to take the boost up from 20 and a half to 23, almost 24.
Right.
23 and a half, 24. So yeah, a lot of those gains there you're seeing are from boost down low, not so much ignition timing.
Okay.
And then at higher RPM, the power gains are bigger because we can, take advantage of the fact that we're not as knock limited now.
Right. So it's carrying right to the red line much
it's
nicely.
It's carrying more, yes, exactly. But we did get to the limit of this as well.
Okay.
So if we had even more octane, or maybe if you can mix this to a higher concentration.
Sure, yeah. We're only at a 102.
Or some E85.
Or E85.
E85, probably E85 would be Who knows with this turbo when it would run out of steam exactly,
Mm-hmm.
but probably, 620, 630, something like that, I would guess.
Yeah, I think Dove saw 650 on E85 on his race car, so that's certainly in the same ballpark.
Mm-hmm.
And he might have had a larger exhaust side housing than we do on this turbo.
Right.
So it seems like we've got a healthy motor that's making what it should make at these boost levels with this kind of fuel,
I
right?
think it's one thing for people to understand that fuel really plays a big role in how much power you get.
Mm-hmm.
So when someone says, "Oh, on the internet," the fuel you're using, really plays a big role into how much power you can get out of the engine safely.
Yeah.
And you can see here that we just added a can of this stuff and it gained 75 horsepower.
It's pretty impressive, isn't
So
it?
the mechanical hardware is there to make power.
Right.
But if the fuel can't do it in a stable fashion, then
Mhm.
you have to stop because you will blow the engine up.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, as we talked about earlier, we could just ignore knock and make a glory run for the internet right now. We're not
yeah,
going to do
this
that.
575 that we made, we could have done that on pump gas as well.
Right.
It just would have been rattling apart and we could have, damaged the engine.
Sure. And I think that's important to keep in mind when you're looking at these numbers, thinking, oh my God, you've only made 500 or 575 on this race gas or whatever. If you've got E85 available to you, you can make those glory numbers if that's what you're about. But we want this thing to be drivable.
Yeah, the main thing that's really people need to understand is, you can have a turbo that spools at 6,000 RPM and have a 1,000 RPM power band, but you're literally spending money to have less enjoyment with your vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
Like I would take a car that you can stomp on at 4,000 and it, picks up and goes and feels lively over a 1,000 or 1,500 RPM power band car any day. I mean, unless you're just drag racing and you have a sequential gearbox, why would you only want to have 10% of your engine speed make power?
Yeah.
And when it does come on, it's like super undrivable.
Yeah.
It's not fun on the highway. It's not fun on the racetrack. Why? What's the point?
It's just bragging numbers, bro. It's bragging
so
numbers.
this, maybe there's not as much peak, but this will beat most of those power cars on the street.
Yeah, exactly.
And we've seen that many times because, if you're flooring it for 3 seconds and have nothing, and then it spools and you have power for 2 seconds, but this thing had power the entire time,
Yep.
this is going to be faster.
Got a lot of catching up to do.
Anyway.
It's also nice to see how stable the boost is. Like once we're up to almost 24 pounds, it just carries all the way to redline nice and stable, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. And you figure that's an element of the software with the link system, or?
Yeah, this ECU does a good job of boost control for sure. Better than a lot of the other kind of more budget ECUs that don't offer kind of comprehensive closed loop boost control.
Okay.
The Link does a really good job of that.
I guess it's also worth noting that Sasha has played around with Links a lot. You've used them for many years. Even some of their, what was the other brand that Link offered there for a while? Vipec, you've used those a bunch, and you've always seemed to get good results out of them. And I think it's safe to say that they do offer a lot of features at their price point. They're I think, a great value ECU, aren't they, compared to other stuff in that price point?
Sure. I think for that value, it's hard to beat them.
Yeah, and we've had really great tech support from Jason and everyone at Link too. So thanks again, guys, for that, and thank you, Sasha, for dialing in this tune. I'm stoked to go for a ride in the passenger seat. I don't know if I want to bang gears in this thing because it's kind of turned into Pete's pride and joy. I can see in his eyes that he loves this car.
I do.
It's pretty awesome.
I'm also very worried about it, but
now it's a 2J. It'll be good.
Yeah. I'm worried about smoking the tires and putting this thing into a ditch.
That's a valid concern.
Maybe we'll have to play around with traction control then. And in the meantime, are we a wrap here? Is this done, PT?
I think we're done at the dyno.
We're done at the dyno. All right. Well, maybe it's time for go for a little street pull and see how you like it out in the real world.
All right, guys, here we are. This is post dyno day. Figured I'd give you guys a ride along in this thing. My mind is still kind of blown about it. This car to me now is the perfect M3. This engine is absolutely stellar in this chassis. I can't stress enough how much smoother it is, how much more power it makes. Let me just quickly touch on the chassis before we go and do a pull here. The JRZ coilovers are fantastic. Honestly, these are some of the best coilovers I've ever ridden on. This car drives like stock. It feels just firmer. It soaks up the bumps without any issues. I absolutely love it. The Cooler Works shifter took a little bit of getting used to. This thing, once I got it dialed in, I like it so much better. As you can see, it's very precise, it's very crisp, it requires a higher effort. I'm still a little bit on the fence about having this for a daily driver. Like, it's so nice in that sense. It's super easy to downshift, but it does require an extra little bit of effort. So if I was building a car that was for daily driver use completely, I'm not sure that I'd be going with this. I do love the fact that we didn't have to put detents in and all that jazz. So it's nice in that sense, but there's certainly some drawbacks. There always are in that sense. I know second gear is useless. It roasts the tires pretty easily and quickly. So I'm gonna be very progressive to get on the power here. As you guys know, this thing makes a ton of jam. So we're at 3,500 RPM and oh my God. Whoa! Okay, I gotta, oh my goodness, so high. This is the thing with these cars, like that's stuck, which is incredible. Like these cars just, when you make this much power, it's awesome. Like that feeling there is hard to explain. Pushes you back. When it hits so hard. But like, look at my shifting. I'm like trying to process everything. I'm so slow with the shifter. It's gonna take me a while to get used to how to drive this car quickly and fast. All right, I'm gonna do another quick pull here. Slow down a bit. Bring it down under 3,500 RPM so you guys can see this thing like spools up and just goes. Oh my goodness. Holy moly. Whoa. This thing is incredible and I'm losing gears here. This is not good. Yeah, this is weird. Huh, I may have developed a clutch issue. I've had a moment to decompress and I just wanted to really recap a couple of things. This car truly for me is the perfect M3 now. I mentioned it before. It feels incredible. I think the combination of everything in this vehicle is amazing. The 2J just feels so good. That GTX 3584 RS Garrett Motion Turbo just comes on strong. It has a bunch of torque down below. Like you're never feeling like at 3,000 RPM if you mash on it. Sure, it takes a moment to come up, but I think we're making like 300 wheel horsepower at that point. So it's still a ton of power there. The car as a package is really a great street car. The exhaust, that vibrant exhaust system, the titanium system that Vin at NV Auto built us, superb. Like that thing is just such a good exhaust for the street. It doesn't have a ton of drone. It's not excessively loud. It just has that perfect 2J sound. Like to me, it's absolutely perfect. I would not change a thing about it. The StopTech trophy kit that we have for the front brakes, they are incredible. You're gonna see on the racetrack. So good. The one thing with them is they are floating rotors or floating discs. So what you have is when you're driving down the street and you're hitting bumps, there's a bit of a rattle. At first I was like, oh, something's loose. And then I realized, oh, no, it's just the rotors that are floating. But man, so good. They do dust a little bit, but again, we've got race pads on there, so that's totally acceptable. The JRZ RSs, that's what I should have called them before. They're a two-way damper. And just to reiterate, they're so good. They are so good on the street. I'm excited to test them on the track because for me, this is like perfect. We haven't even played with the settings yet and they feel so good. Like I would not change a thing for the street on that setup right now. They're just so compliant. They ride well. Oh, and another thing, the in-cabin noise. Like this still feels like a sporty street car. I haven't gone past that point where this car now becomes unenjoyable inside. Like these seats are amazing. There's just not a ton of road noise. Like it's what an M3 should be like. And that's why I keep reiterating, that this car is the perfect M3 for me. It really is. Like it's got This engine, like look at it, this was a junkyard motor that we refreshed. It had all those bad seals. It's black inside, so nobody took care of it. And here it is making 575 to the wheels, which is like 600, almost 650 horsepower to the crank. It's absolutely incredible. Everything seems to be reliable. It runs cool. Like this thing is an absolute monster. Honestly, I don't even think for the racetrack I'm going to be able to drive this thing at 575 wheel. It just feels like it's going to be such a handful. There's a lot that I need to spend, you know, time driving and like learning this vehicle, because this is a lot of car to be able to drive fast, and it's going to take some time. Unfortunately, I'm not going to get any track time in before our showdown. We just don't have the time. Speaking of which, Dave is going to be picking his supercar. I don't know what it is. I'm super excited to find out what that car is going to be. So I think that's going to be the next episode where he reveals that to me. There may be an unexpected episode if we have an issue, because as you guys just saw, this thing did not want to go into gear while it's running, but when it's just sitting here, it's going into gear fine. So we may just have to bleed the clutch. I'm crossing my fingers. It's just that there may be some air in the system that when the car got hot, it caused the clutch not to want to engage properly. So let's hope that's the case. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys found this video a little bit educational as in terms of our thought process as to making power, because, you know, it may sound like an excuse, but for us to make 700-800 to the wheels on a car like this that we want to use just doesn't make sense. And it's the ethos of putting the right amount of balance of power into the chassis. If this was an all-wheel drive car, then maybe, you know, if it's going to Road Atlanta or VIR or all these tracks that have high speeds, then yes. But for what we're doing and what I wanted, I think this is the perfect setup. We're at 3,500 RPM and oh my God, guys. Whoa! Okay, I gotta.